this for the next half hour. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Let's engage. See if we can't make heads or tails of this problem. So there's a question for those of you out there, virtual students, there's a question about one of the introductory problems. All right. So
I think it was down towards the end, somewhere in the teens. Maybe 11.
11, yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Let's see. Is that it?
Yep.
All right. So the Elegant Farmer grocery store buys bushels of apples each week. Calculate the weighted average price paid per bushel based on the following information for the month of June. So we've got our 4 weeks in the month of June, number of bushels that were purchased, price per bushel, and then the total cost, and this of course would be 250 bushels multiplied by 122, so the total cost there 305, and then we've got our total plus our number of bushels. So question 8, did you have a?
There is a video that has an exact example.
Exact example?
Yep.
Okay, okay, so, how to weighted average. Is that what we're looking for?
I think that's the one.
All right. Of course we
There we
can't,
go.
of course we can't hear it. Why can't we hear it? That's not helping you guys at all. All right, so let's start over again. In this assignment, we will learn to compute the weighted average. Given information, the price and the number of bushels of shelled corn purchased by something to compute the weighted average price paid per bushel. Total cost in the first week of July, calculated by multiplying 125 bushels by $1.45. So for a total cost of $181.25. Total cost in the second week, calculated the same way. Calculate the total cost in the third week and the fourth week. At the total, all the weeks, get the total cost. So $437.50 for the month of July. Total number of bushels. So divide by 437 divided by 300. The weighted average price per bushel is the $1.46. So, I think probably just the terminology of weighted average is what may be throwing you off. How do I get back? Okay, so for here, we're going to take the
960,
Yep.
divided by 737.
Yeah. Let me find, I want the calculator. Yep. So we take our 960.22 divided by 737. It's our average price per bushel of, these are just true, false.
No.
Or is it asking for?
It's
It's
right
asking
under
you
this
to
one.
write it in there.
Oh, it asks you to write it in there. There you go. That's kind of not clear.
Well, you can check it.
So 130. Check my work. There we go. So that help ratio of 8 is expressed in its simplest form. Not really. You could probably simplify that to 1,
Yeah, it's not
6,
18 and 30.
10, yeah. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We got that going for us. Any questions out there in virtual land that you can type?
It took me like more than 2 hours.
How did you find out about the video?
Oh, it just stays over there, like.
Oh, yeah.
watch the
So,
video.
yeah, the videos, sorry, I exited out. The videos are up there to explain to you. And there are in other places in your homework, not just the introductory, there will be videos as well. Kind of show me how videos. They're not for every problem, but there are some out there to help you out. So take a look at that if you're having trouble with something. YouTube fractions or averages with Mr. J is what was said here. So it says for anyone struggling with the math, YouTube fractions or averages with Mr. J. Mr. J, I love YouTube. So I'll pull that up, Mr. J. I know you can't see it. I'll pull this over here.
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
I know the weather is bad on Thursday. You think there will be a class?
Is it? I
My
haven't even-
girlfriend goes to Grandview and they already emailed her saying there is no class on Thursday.
Well, you know, really?
Yeah.
Like snow wise.
There's like a snowstorm or something this Thursday.
Winter weather, moderate to heavy snow possible Wednesday afternoon through Thursday morning. Winds 20-25. Awesome.
It's a snowstorm. You're happy.
4 to 9 inches.
Mhm.
Greatest amounts north of Waterloo to Ames to Atlantic line, minor ice. Okay. Well, I can't really say. They have been known to cancel, DMAC cancels classes. We have a lot of, we're a commuter college, so that happens frequently. So yes, it is entirely possible. Considering though that we have now missed most of this period, what we will do is meet online. And I'll just meet from my home, so I won't have this issue. Okay, so we'll still have class, it'll just be virtually, if that is the case, all right?
Send the email and
Yes, as soon as I know, I will let you know. Yeah, but I get, you get those DMAC alerts, I get them at the same time that you do. So I don't get like a heads up, and it's up to each provost as well. But if it's, like, even if it's really bad up in Ames, but not so bad down here, I'm coming from Ames, so I probably would just decide to have class from there. So is everybody okay with that? Do you have access? You would be able to access it if?
And in the least case, we can all go to your house.
Oh, you all come to my house, that's right, there you go. Although I don't know that you want to drive, but we'll go ahead and do that as a contingency. So seeing as we missed so much today. Oh, there you go, Mr. J. So this is the recommendation if you have any problems with math. This was from Tina, and it should have helped her a lot. All right. Any other questions? Let me get to. Luckily, this stuff is pretty much, and we're not doing any calculations at this point. So, we have already kind of touched on some of these items in the introduction to this chapter. So now we're just kind of getting into a little bit more detail. going through some of these fair employment laws again, that fair employment pertains to anti-discrimination types of laws. The big one, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII of that Civil Rights Act is the equal employment opportunity portion of the act. So many of you have probably heard of the EEO, the Equal Employment Opportunity. Whenever you fill out a application, a lot of times there will be provisions on there that, we're asking this as part of the Equal Employment Opportunity Act. So that is part of the Civil Rights Act. This is the part that prohibits discrimination, hiring, firing, promoting, or compensating based on these factors and not more than these factors. So as you can tell, this does not include everything that somebody could be discriminated against. Or there are other laws out there, though, that have been added over the years that expand this list. So for the Civil Rights Act, it's based on color, race, religion, national origin, or gender. So only those, 5 personal aspects. Unions as well are subject to this. So if the company has a union, they also may not segregate members based upon these factors. Now, again, it's for hiring, firing, promoting, or compensating. So you can't pay somebody different because of their race or religion or gender, as long as it's the same position and presumably the same skills are required and the same educational background, all things being equal. Because obviously, you may have, if, for example, you've got 2 receptionists and one of them's been there for 10 years, the other one has been there for 3 months. There's going to be a difference in rates of pay, right? But based solely on these characteristics, they cannot discriminate. Also prohibits sexual harassment. Now, I had mentioned, kind of touched upon a little bit with the FLSA, and we're going to go into this more in the next chapter. The FLSA, as well as the Civil Rights Act, does not apply to every employee. It applies to those employees who are engaged in activities that are affecting commerce. The federal government really can't, it doesn't have a whole lot of ability to enforce laws unless there's some sort of interstate commerce going on. Other than that, if there's no interstate commerce, state laws would apply. Just kind of a weird aspect of our federal system. But it would be, and they have to affect commerce, employ 15 or more workers in each of 20 or more weeks in the current or preceding calendar year. So although not every employee is necessarily a beneficiary of this law, again, the vast majority would be, and if not, there are state laws that would come into play. So there we go. Civil Rights Act of 1991, so recall, I think I had mentioned this. Civil Rights Act of 1991 was an extension of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, even though it prohibited discrimination based upon those factors, it didn't really have any teeth to it. There was no way for those who had been victims of discrimination to seek any damages. Civil Rights Act of 1991 provided that ability for those victims of discrimination to then go ahead and seek compensatory and punitive damages. At that time, it's kind of amazing that it took that long, almost 30 years, for that to happen. Let's see. Okay. Bye. Okay, so another one, the Age Discrimination and Employment Act, the ADEA. This was passed in 1867. It prohibits discrimination based on an individual's age. The cutoff for this is actually 40 years old, which is pretty young, if you ask me. So again, it applies to employers that are engaged in interstate commerce with 20 or more workers. So you'll see this frequently, this restriction applied to many of these laws, okay? The interstate commerce part. And like I said, we're going to talk more about it because we're going to discuss it when we get into more details about the FLSA as well. Protection for workers 40 years or older. There are some exceptions. So executives 65 or older who have held high policy-making positions during a two-year period prior to retirement and entitled to an annual retirement benefit of at least $44,000. That's very specific. They can be forcibly retired. So it's the burden is on the employer to keep records of why they terminated someone. So if it's an individual, what this means essentially is if you've got an employee that needs to be terminated for whatever reason, if they are over the age of 40, you better have some pretty good records to indicate that it was not because of their age. Okay. One of the areas where this has been, it's been litigated and is very common is pilots, airline pilots. There is a mandatory retirement age for airline pilots, which, think about it, probably makes some sense, right? As we age, our reflexes become a little less sharp, our vision becomes a little less sharp, all of that. However, at the same time, I don't know about you, but if I'm on an airplane, I want somebody with some experience. And those individuals who are older are going to have more experience as well. But there is a mandatory retirement age for pilots for that reason. So this act doesn't prohibit, if there is a justifiable reason for it, such as in the case of airline pilots, then this act can be circumvented. But the instances of that are really few and far between. It for the most part, will apply to pretty much every profession. So, sorry here. I don't know where I am. I'm down there. Americans with Disabilities Act. This is another fair employment law, and as the title says, it applies to individuals who are disabled. It prohibits disability-based discrimination. It applies to the job application procedure, as well as hiring, advancement, termination, compensation, training, and other conditions of employment. Again, of course, there are going to be restrictions on it. If the disability, the individual makes them ineligible, really unable to do the job. For example, somebody who is legally blind applying to be a bus driver, that's not going to, that is a justifiable restriction. But if there is no justifiable restriction, then the Americans with Disabilities Act kicks in with the protections. This one is for employers with 15 or more employees. Also employment agencies, again, labor unions, from discriminating against qualified, defined as persons who can perform essential functions of the job with or without reasonable accommodation. So reasonable accommodation might be if, an individual is, see if I can think of, maybe somebody who's paralyzed from the waist down. So they're unable to, they've got some mobility issues, but they're fully able to perform a desk job, but some accommodations will need to be made to the workspace in order to do that. That's a reasonable accommodation. So those reasonable accommodations do have to be, they have to have reasonable accommodations for them. Wheelchair accessible restrooms, ramps for qualified disabled job applicants and workers must be provided if the organization is subject to the provisions of the ADA. Iowa Connection, anybody heard of Tom Harkin? Kathy's heard of Tom Harkin. Maybe some of you are too young to remember Tom Harkin. You think Chuck Grassley's been around for a long time, our Senator Chuck Grassley. Tom Harkin was another long-serving senator in Iowa. We don't fire people, we don't fire politicians here in Iowa. We just keep them around forever. Tom Harkin was around served for many, many years as well. He was one of the co-authors of this Americans with Disabilities Act. So there's an Iowa connection to this particular piece of legislation. Federal Personal Responsibility Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996. This act is because of this act, employers are required to report to the state when any new individual is hired. Reason being, the state keeps track of child support obligations. And when somebody is hired, that means that they may be subject to, if they have a child support obligation, they may be subject to garnishment of their wages in order to pay that child support. So this Federal Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act mandates that employers within 20 days of hire, they notify the state, not the federal government, but the state, that an individual has been hired. Okay. In Iowa, the W-4 form, which we'll go over what W-4 forms are in I think the next chapter. The W-4 form, which is filled out by new hires, is what's used to then send that information to the state. So when an individual is hired that first day, when they're filling out all their paperwork, they're filling out their tax forms, their I-9 form, and you'll become familiar with this terminology, so don't worry about that. Filling out all their new hire forms, are they going to get health insurance, that sort of stuff. At that time, then the employer needs to send this information as well to the state to make sure that any child support obligations are taken care of.
I have a question. What if like I get married and then I have a child and then I get divorced and then he's paying for the child support and then who is going to claim dependent, me or him?
Well, that's an income tax question and it depends.
Oh.
Yeah, it depends. There's a lot of different factors that would come into play.
Depends on the dissolution of the court.
What's that?
Depends on the court.
Well, it depends on it depends on the living circumstances, where the child is living. It could be dependent upon a court order as well, who gets the dependent. But yeah,
Because like the father is paying the child support means that he's going to claim it.
not
No,
necessarily.
the judge will tell you, the judge will arrange the outcome.
Yeah. Oftentimes as well, divorced couples will switch off every year. Like you get the child 1 year, the ex-husband gets it 1 year, the ex-wife gets it another, and then switches back and forth. So, so there are fines for this. It's not too hefty, $25, but employers are required. So if you're in like a payroll department or human resources department, this would be part of your duties to make sure that this is filled out and filed with the state once any new hire is on their first day of employment. Well, actually, it's within a certain period, but all those forms are usually filled out on their first day of employment. Immigration Reform and Control Act. This act mandates that employers verify the eligibility of employees to work in the U.S. So, of course, you don't have to be a citizen to work in the U.S., but if you're not a citizen, you do have to have some sort of other authorization, maybe a visa or a green card, that sort of thing. And so this form is called the Form I-9, and we are going to look at what the I-9 looks like. This is another one of those new hire forms that would be filled out on the first day of employment. There is particular identification that is required to be submitted as well to the employer. Now, these I-9 forms, the employer doesn't send them off anywhere, but they have to keep them on file. They have to make sure that they've got copies of the form as well as copies of the identifying information. The IDs that are required have to do two things. One, they have to verify that the person is who they say they are. So usually that's a driver's license that is used for that. And secondly, they have to substantiate that the individual is eligible to work. Usually that is a social security card that does not say not eligible for work. Because there are social security cards, individuals can have social security cards who aren't eligible to work in the US, but if that is the case, it indicates that on the social security card. Also, passport helps to satisfy both pieces of information, or driver's license and a naturalization certificate, or a driver's license and a copy of the green card, that sort of thing. Like I said, we're going to be going into more detail and look at the I-9 form as well in a later chapter. Sorry, this is so difficult. There is this E-Verify system is a system that is run by the federal government. It's an electronic system where employers are allowed to enter the E-Verify system and make sure that employees are eligible to work. So it's an additional level of security for the employer. There are some really hefty penalties for employers that employ individuals illegally. And if they didn't have the workers fill out the form, the I-9 forms, there are also some very hefty penalties for that. The E-Verify system is available for employers to kind of help mitigate any of those issues. So if they have an employee who isn't really eligible to work in the US, but they used the E-Verify system and somehow they got on the list of individuals who can work, then that helps to protect the employer from any potential legal issues. There are 20 states where the E-Verify system is required, that employers have to use it. The rest of the states, there's no requirement, but it is highly encouraged. Okay, and that again is part of the Immigration Reform and Control Act. Family Medical Leave Act is another one. Maybe some of you, I usually have students who have actually benefited from the Family Medical Leave Act. I don't know if any of you have had experience with it, what it allows. It allows certain employees, now they have to meet requirements, and it's only for employees at employers that have 50 or more employees within a 75-mile radius, or at least 20 weeks in the current, or for at least 20 weeks in the current or preceding calendar year. So it's only going to be those mid-sized employers to those large employers that are required to abide by the Family Medical Leave Act. What it does is the employee is guaranteed 12 weeks of unpaid leave. You don't get paid for. Now, maybe the employer has a provision for paid leave. That's possible, but the federal government only protects unpaid leave. So you don't get paid while you're gone for childbirth, adoption, serious illness of the employee or the employee's child, spouse, or parent. So if your parent gets ill and needs your assistance, you're guaranteed up to 12 weeks of leave that you can come back to your previous job or to an equivalent job at equivalent rate of pay. Now, again, while you're gone, you don't get paid. Although there are some states that have paid leave now, that do mandate that employers within their state provide paid leave. Iowa is not one of those. Not one of those states that does that. You can use the leave all at once, or you can take it here and there. It's 12 weeks within a 12-month period. The employer also has to continue health care coverage if that is part of one of the benefits that the employee is receiving, but the employee has to pay for it. There's no requirement that the employer continue to pay for it. They just can't cancel them during that 12-week time. So that's the Family Medical Leave Act. Again, that was passed in 1993 under President Clinton. There are some tax credits for employers that provide paid family leave. So most employers are required to provide unpaid, but if they go that extra step and provide paid family leave, they can receive a federal tax credit for that. So it means that cuts their tax liability. if the member is on, the family member is on active duty up to 26 weeks or any, if it's for any injury or illness in the line of duty. So if you're in the military and you become injured, or your spouse is in the military, becomes injured, that leave then goes up to 26 weeks. There are some exemptions to it. We're not going to go through the details of that, but like I said, some states have actually implemented some paid family leave plans. Mostly, I don't know if California does now, I believe Oregon, those West Coast states. Do that. All right, so we're out of time. I got through about half of what I wanted to get through, believe it or not. Although I was going to share with you, I've got some videos that I posted, just real quick if you've got time. I'm not going to show them to you, I'm just going to show you where they are. I posted them just before class. I got a bunch of supplemental stuff under chapter 1, by the way. It's hours and hours of entertainment. So I put up a folder of Iowa employment law information. So this is all, there's some videos here to tell you a little bit about employment law. I know that there was a question about at-will employment. There's a video here describing what at-will employment is. Some changes. Now, the most recent video that, oh shoot, you don't see it, sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. So this is under videos, lectures, and resources in chapter 1. There's all sorts of these, got all sorts of stuff. Lecture videos are up here, so I'll put those recordings. So if you want more information about the Civil Rights Act of 1964, click on that, and it tells you and shows you the actual act, so from the National Archives, and describes the provisions of it. Iowa, the Age Discrimination Employment Act as well. Iowa employment law information, so there are videos here. Now these are from law firms that have put up videos on YouTube. So, ignore the part that says, hey, if you were injured, call us. But it's good information. It gives you a little bit of overview of what's going on in Iowa. Iowa Workforce Development, which handles unemployment, and like a quick reference guide to Iowa laws as well. So I just encourage you to take a look at that. The one I wanted to, okay, so these. So these are a series of videos that kind of go through in much more detail a lot of these laws that we are talking about in this chapter. So Civil Rights Act, employment discrimination, other laws that protect discrimination, workers with disabilities, so we just went over the Americans with Disabilities Act. In that particular one, and then employment, the hiring process, how compensation, so these will become as well, once we start getting into how individuals are compensated, they'll become a little bit more relevant to you as well. But just some, I think they're mostly about 10 to 15 minutes long. So just give you something to supplement the information that we're talking about here in class. But other than that, like I said, there are loads, lots and lots of supplemental stuff. No, you're not tested on this stuff. So this is just additional stuff for you to kind of help augment your learning in class and from the book as well. Okay? Sorry about all the technical glitches, and I kept you for 5 minutes extra, but thank you very much for being patient. Hopefully Thursday. Well, Thursday, if we will not have any audio issues if I'm teaching from home. I can tell you that. But if we're here, and just, keep your eyes peeled. I'll let you know. As soon as I know something, I'll let you know. Okay? Thank you.
Hi.
What is the other payroll class?
Payroll certification review.
Yeah, and do you think you will teach it in summer?
I teach it, yes. It's only offered online, but it is offered in the summer.
Okay.
Yes, and in fact, that's a great time to take it because all this information is fresh in your mind. Because a lot of the payroll certification review class is exactly that, it's review. So it's stuff that you've learned here, but it's formatted to kind of follow along with the fundamental payroll certificate exam.
And it's fully online or I have to?
It's fully online. Yep. Yeah, that's the only way that one is. Yeah. All right, thank you all. Sorry about the glitches. Okay, I've still got some of you online here. I think, somewhere. Maybe? Maybe not.